Hi, everyone. We're so excited to have you here today. This is the AWS Q4 Quarter 4 event. Our theme is Success Stories of Women in Surgery. So before we get started, we just want to quickly introduce ourselves. My name is Elizabeth. I'm a fourth-year medical student at University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley. Ines, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, so my name is Ines. I'm a second-year medical student at the University of Exeter in England, and I am the regional representative for Europe on the National Student Committee of AWS this year.
And Danny?
Good morning, my name is Danelia. I'm the Latin America representative, and I go to San Juan Bautista School of Medicine in Puerto Rico.
Awesome. And I'm just going to quickly introduce our wonderful speakers today. So we have Dr. Andrea Acchio. She is currently the Division Chief of Minimally Invasive and Percutaneous Surgery at Hospital General de Agudo Parmenio Piñero in Argentina. She's also the president and founder of Cirujanonas Argentina, a society that was born as an initiative to encourage our female surgeons improve their conditions within the working environment and help them to construct their future as strong professionals. We also have Dr. C. She's a plastic and reconstructive surgeon at the at the Centre Hospitalier Universitaire in Dijon, Burgundy in France. She also holds a fellowship in hand surgery. And lastly, we have Dr. Latinza, who is the chair of the Department of Orthopedics and Rehabilitation at the Yale School of Medicine. She holds a fellowship in hand surgery and in pediatric hand and upper extremity. In 2009, she co-founded the Peri Outreach Program, now known as the Peri Initiative, which aims to increase exposure of high school girls to orthopedic surgery and biomechanical engineering. So again, we're so excited to have these wonderful speakers to share their stories in surgery. Before we start, if you have any questions throughout the event, please put them in the chat and we'll be monitoring it, and hopefully we'll get to answer a few of those questions at the end of the event. So to start with, I think we'll have Danny ask the first question. Sorry, Ines.
It's fine. Yeah, so we're really excited and really honored to have you all today. And so our first question was really, we wanted to know sort of what were some of the challenges that you faced in your journey from training, medical school, and now beyond being confirmed attending, and how did you overcome them, and what are sort of the tools maybe that you have used and that you feel could be very valuable to share with us? So I will start with Dr. Andrea Acchio, and then Dr. C, and then Dr. Latanza.
Bueno, empiezo yo. Bueno, gracias enormes por la invitación a participar. Se los dije cuando comenzó esto, cuando nos conectamos recién. Celebro que cada vez sean menos las barreras que hacen que podamos comunicarnos. Celebro que el idioma no haya sido un impedimento para este grupo de mujeres que han decidido llevar adelante esta reunión, seguramente con muchísimo esfuerzo y posiblemente casi sin ningún apoyo, salvo el de la fuerza misma que nos impulsa para seguir adelante. Así que yo celebro estar hoy acá, celebro poder compartir mi experiencia, que no sé si es una historia de éxito, es una historia de vida como la que seguramente tendrán todas mis compañeras. Pero ya estar acá sí me hace y me considero exitosa, porque nunca pensé en mi vida que esto iba a suceder. Así que gracias a las organizadoras de este evento. Y estoy abierta a que me pregunten lo que ustedes quieran y acá estamos listas para contestar.
Maybe we will go with so what would you say, Dr. Andrea Acchio, was 3 of the challenges, specific challenges that you faced, maybe one as a student, one as a trainee, and one as an attending, and what did you use to go beyond them?
Bueno, fueron mucho más de 3, sin ninguna duda fueron mucho más de 3. No en la facultad de medicina, yo estudié en la Universidad de Buenos Aires, en Argentina, y en la facultad no he superado ningún obstáculo más allá del estudio, como cada una de ustedes seguramente lo hará. Y no ha pasado, digamos, estudiando uno se recibe. El problema es después. El problema es cuando uno quiere elegir lo que hasta ahora es un mundo que quizá se toma como que no nos pertenece. Es un mundo donde está dominado casi y exclusivamente por los hombres, por lo menos eso es lo que sucede en la Argentina. Y ahí nos encontramos sí con el primer obstáculo, que es cuando uno dice yo quiero hacer cirugía, yo quiero ser cirujana, y entonces ahí empieza, primero quizás la familia, a decir, ¿te parece? ¿No será demasiado? ¿No es que es un mundo donde no te van a dejar avanzar? Pero vos seguís para adelante y ese es el primer obstáculo que vencés, convenciendo a tu familia que vos sí vas a poder. El siguiente paso es la residencia. La residencia en la Argentina, por lo menos, hay varios sistemas. Hay un sistema público al que pertenezco y al que defiendo con todas mis fuerzas, que es un sistema que está sostenido por el Estado, por el gobierno, donde el único requisito para poder entrar es el examen de residencias. Y el examen no tiene algo que sí tienen algunos entes privados, que es una entrevista. Con lo cual, cuando una decide tomar la residencia, sabe que si va a un lugar donde existe la entrevista, ese es un gran escollo en nuestro camino, es un gran obstáculo en nuestro camino, porque la entrevista hace que se elijan hombres, esa es la realidad. Más allá de la capacidad y más allá de la nota del examen y más allá de lo que una mujer pueda demostrar, la preferencia es hacia los muchachos. Hoy es un poco más dudoso porque somos tantas las mujeres que egresamos de la Facultad de Medicina que en realidad se hace un poco más difícil seleccionar hombres porque la mayoría son mujeres. Pero aún así se han hecho trabajos acá en la Argentina donde muestran que si bien se presentan más mujeres a dar el examen, entran más hombres a la residencia, sobre todo en las especialidades quirúrgicas. Ese es el primer gran obstáculo. El segundo obstáculo, en realidad, es sostenerse en la residencia. Cuando yo ingresé en el año 91, allá lejos, es casi historia para muchas de ustedes, yo era la única mujer residente y todos, absolutamente todos mis compañeros eran varones. Y fue muy difícil. Algunos nunca lo aceptaron, otros sí, y de otros, de hecho, sigo siendo amiga de la vida, porque fue realmente muy difícil, Y la tercer parte importante es cuando uno sale de la residencia y tiene que conseguir su trabajo independiente. Ahí es donde uno elige qué es lo que quiere hacer y empieza un trabajo de mucho esfuerzo y mucha dedicación para lograr hacer con el triple del esfuerzo lo que cualquiera de nuestros compañeros hombres hace con un mínimo esfuerzo. Así que como obstáculos tengo muchísimos. Los 3 hitos fueron esos claramente.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Dr. C, what would you like to say about challenges and overcoming them?
Hi, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank you for inviting us to this event, which is really interesting. And it's something I wish I would have had when I was a medical student, because it will give you hope that you can achieve anything, even if people tells you that women are not no good, but not as good are their male colleagues. So for me, some challenges I faced during my training. First, when I was a medical student, after I passed the 6-year exam, I had to choose my specialty, which was plastic surgery and reconstructive surgery. And I had to move out of Paris, where I'm from, because I didn't want to choose the city, but I really want to choose the specialty, the surgical specialty. And that was hard because I have to move out of my city. I had to leave my family, my friends, my, at the time, boyfriend. So it was really complicated for me, but I really wanted to pursue my dream job. So I think that was one of my challenges. As a resident, since medical studies are really highly competitive, you can see it's harder when you're a woman, because it's still a man's world. All of my colleagues in plastic surgery in Dijon are men. And I think there's a lot of women in other medical and surgical specialties, but where I'm working, I'm still the only one. So it's still a matter. Do not forget that you can do as good as the other one, even when everybody tells you you cannot, and have confidence. And as Dr. Andrea Akio said, the first help to achieve it is to have your family support. And for me, my family has always been supportive, always telling me I was gonna make it. So I would say it was easier because I was in a good state of mind to pursue my training. As an attending, we're only 2 surgeons. So it was quite hard because we have hand surgery emergencies. So I was on shift 1 day out of 2. So it was really tiring, but I think I learned a lot, and it's better now that we are more practitioner. And I started going on humanitarian missions, which was really a big challenge, but I was never alone because I was going, and I'm still going, with my head of department, which is really there to help us understand the specificities of this type of missions. So I would say I worked, of course, but to overcome the challenges, it's important to have your family next to you, your friends as well, colleagues that are gracious and considerate, and do not forget to be true to yourself, because it's easy to lose track in this particular environment.
Thank you. Dr. Latenza?
Good morning, and thank you so much for asking me to be here today. I'm enjoying hearing the stories and advice from our other 2 esteemed panelists. I think, as was said earlier, there's more than 3 obstacles. If you decide to be a female surgeon, there are obstacles along the way, but I think the most important thing is to be resilient and have an internal way of dealing with those obstacles. I'm an orthopedic surgeon, and in the United States, only 7% of practicing orthopedic surgeons are women. So when I started, I was also the only woman in my program, and it can feel quite isolating. You can feel like you're alone and that maybe you're not getting the same opportunities. My first obstacle is where I went to medical school. The chairman of the orthopedic department, when I went and asked him for a letter of recommendation, he said, I don't write letters of recommendation for women who want to go into this specialty. So I thought the door was closed then. But what I did was I decided then that it would not do me any good to rotate at that hospital. And I rotated at a different hospital with different attendings. And what you'll find as a woman in surgery is that you have to be twice as good as the men in order to be half as recognized. So you will have to work harder. And so I worked harder and won the respect of the attendings that I was on service with and had letters of recommendations from them. In the beginning, I was afraid to ask for help from the people that I knew that might be able to help me because I thought they were too busy and I thought maybe I was imposing on them. So one of the ways to overcome these obstacles is to cultivate mentors and sponsors, whether they're men or women, that believe in you and have a broader perspective on life and know that women can do everything that men can do. And there's even now literature to support that, a study in America that you're less likely to have a surgical complication if your surgeon is a woman. So I think, in residency training, similar obstacles. I was working with all men. I had to prove myself to those men, but despite proving myself, there were microaggressions every single day. And here we say it's death by 1,000 paper cuts. That's what a microaggression is. You feel sometimes beat down every day, and that you're having to constantly prove yourself, constantly laugh at jokes that aren't funny, things like that. And again, you have to turn to your family and friends and turn to your own internal resilience and grit, because if this is what you really want to do, surgery is the best career in the world. I'm convinced of that. I can't think of any other thing I'd want to do. What we are allowed to do for patients is a true gift. And if this is your passion, you should pursue it and know that you'll make it. I think, becoming a young attending is another obstacle that you have to overcome. You're meeting new people. And when I started in my department, there was only one other woman in the department. When I left the department, there were 15 of us. In fact, the most women in any department in the country. And so it's a similar kind of thing of having to prove yourself, not only to your colleagues, but there's also a difference in the way even nurses interact with female surgeons. So there's some inherent bias that's probably unconscious bias, but it's there all the time. And I think it is less and less as there's more women going into this specialty. But when I went into orthopedics, I only knew one other woman who was an orthopedic surgeon. And she was instrumental. In fact, I named our nonprofit the Perry Initiative after her. So you just have to find that one champion for you. And if that person is a good champion, then you'll make it through all of the obstacles that might come into your path. And my other way of overcoming these obstacles was to become the person who is now hopefully lifting up other women in the profession by becoming a fellowship director and a chair of a department. Thank you.
Thank you so much. This is very insightful, and hopefully this is giving some ideas to many on sort of the road ahead and how they can navigate it. My next question is really trying to own a little bit more on those sort of facilitators. So Dr. Latanza talked about mentorship and sponsorship. And so I'm wondering, what other facilitators for success would you say there are and that you have used? And especially what kind of opportunities the people who are listening today and are participating should maybe try to grasp or create for themselves. So maybe Dr. Andreacchio. So as some people have just joined us, when Dr. Andreacchio speak, if you don't understand Spanish, yeah, then feel free to switch to English.
Bueno, qué difícil. Antes de contestarte las preguntas, quería comentarles algo que se me viene a la cabeza cuando escucho hablar a las otras dos colegas que están conmigo en el panel. Y es que pareciera que la palabra esfuerzo, la palabra sacrificio, las palabras dejar todo para, transforma nuestra profesión en una lucha, y no debiera ser así. No debiera ser así, digamos, debiéramos disfrutar en el camino todo lo que nosotras queremos lograr, porque ese es el objetivo, digamos, no debiera tratarse de un sufrimiento. Y la realidad es que si una mira para atrás, y yo lo hice estos días pensando en cómo contestar todas estas preguntas que ustedes me hacían, en realidad revisar la vida, ni siquiera revisar la carrera, porque la carrera es una cuestión de esfuerzos, pero revisar todo lo que nos fue pasando y todo lo que fuimos dejando y todas las cosas que fuimos dejando en el camino para poder seguir adelante en esto que nos gusta, y todo el esfuerzo, que las dos han dicho lo mismo, y creo que las tres en diferentes partes del mundo, las tres vivimos las mismas situaciones. Una tiene que, pareciera que tiene que luchar para conseguir lo que quiere hacer. Y la verdad es que si uno lo compara con nuestros colegas hombres, yo no tengo dudas de que ellos también luchan y de que ellos también dejan cosas para seguir y para llegar a puestos, digamos, de conducción o a puestos importantes dentro de su especialidad. Pero es cierto que también que por más que nosotras luchemos, nos es muy difícil alcanzar esos lugares. Y nos es muy difícil porque pareciera que en nuestra cultura no están destinados para nosotras. Y entonces nosotras luchamos y corremos atrás de lo que queremos obtener, y muchas veces nos frustramos porque nos damos cuenta que por más trabajo que hagamos, cualquiera que esté abajo de nosotros puede alcanzarlo con un mínimo esfuerzo. Y ahí entra un poco todo el tema que yo estuve viendo que ustedes querían hablar, que es el tema de los mentores y el tema de los patrocinios. Y creo que como todo tiene que ver con todo, digamos, una pregunta se enlaza perfectamente con la otra. Ahora que somos muchas mujeres y que las que estamos más grandes, que tenemos anteojos porque ya no vemos muy bien, no porque nos guste, pero bueno, que tenemos anteojos, ya somos muchas, ya somos unas cuantas, y creo que estamos dispuestas a ayudar a las que están abajo nuestro. Nos damos cuenta que lo importante que es tener un mentor en la vida. Nosotras, las que tuvimos solo mentores hombres porque no teníamos la posibilidad de tener una mujer que nos guiara, porque podía haber una, dos, tres, pero no como hay ahora, que somos muchas. Y entonces, quizás, si bien es mucha responsabilidad, es muy bueno que podamos abrir el camino a la gente y a las mujeres, sobre todo, que vienen por detrás nuestro. Yo tuve, por supuesto, como todas, yo tuve mentores a lo largo de mi vida, tuve quien me formó en todo lo que yo sé hoy de cirugía y de cirugía percutánea, y en algún momento me tuve que ir porque yo ya no podía crecer más, porque creo que la función del mentor es no solamente guiar y acompañar, sino dar lugar y dejar crecer. Y a veces eso es muy difícil cuando uno se transforma en el discípulo de toda la vida. Y entonces a nosotras las mujeres nos cuesta más no conseguir ya quizás el mentor. El mentor de por sí mejor elige un hombre que una mujer, pero cuando elige una mujer es como que es la figura paternalista. Y las mujeres a veces no queremos la figura paternalista, queremos corrernos de ese rol y queremos mostrarle a la persona que nos enseña y que nos guía que nosotros somos iguales y que podemos crecer y que podemos tener autonomía. Y ahí es donde la cosa se empieza a complicar, y entonces uno se termina corriendo y vuelve otra vez a luchar y otra vez a pelear. Y en el medio de esto el patrocinio, que es algo completamente diferente, pero que las empresas suelen no patrocinar mujeres, porque patrocinan a nuestros colegas hombres, porque son nuestros colegas hombres los que, llegado el momento, deciden viajar, deciden ir a los congresos, se les paga los congresos. Vamos, lo nuestro es, lamentablemente, de un esfuerzo tremendo para poder llegar a lo mismo que nuestros compañeros. Y eso creo que es lo que tenemos que cambiar. Y para eso, como dijo hace un rato una de mis colegas, celebro que esto exista, porque esto hace que desde que uno sale de la facultad, sabe que tienen quien buscar, que tiene a quien buscar, que tienen quienes antes hayan abierto el camino. Nosotras no por nada hicimos cirujanas argentinas por esto, porque nos dábamos cuenta que hasta acá llegábamos, que nuestro techo de cristal es real, existe, pero también sabemos que lo podemos romper. Así que, nada, otra vez celebro este encuentro.
Thank you so much, Dr. C.
Can you hear me? Yes? Okay, thank you. So, as it has been said before, the difficulty for us as a woman is that when men, even when they're medical students or residents, arrive near an OR or every other places at a hospital, they are entitled. Everybody's like, yeah, it's the surgeon arriving, even if it's only the medical student. And it happens even for me today, when I have a medical student who's just assisting my consult, but he has a beard. Okay, patients, especially older one, they speak to him and not to me because I look too young or I don't look like I can do the job. So that can really be frustrating, but you have to work really harder to be accepted, as Dr. Latenza said, accepted by your colleagues, accepted by older colleagues, but also accepted by the medical team, such as nurses in the OR, but in the service, secretary, everyone, basically. And what we must face, contrary to male colleague, in that you represent all the female of the world. So when one female surgeon is doing a mistake or not even a bad job, but something slightly inconvenient, every woman are trash. And it's not the same for men. I mean, they can go there and do really something bad and people will say, oh, he was tired, or we don't know why, but they'll make excuses for them. So that's something to know. That's hard, but hopefully we'll get better going forward. But for now, it's still the same. You represent all the female. And what facilitators I consider I used, first of all, like I said before, not being afraid to move out of your comfort zone, but move out literally from the place you live in. If you feel like you don't have the opportunities where you stay, do not be afraid to travel. I moved inside France, but sometimes to go abroad, and maybe you'll have there better opportunities as a woman, as a surgeon. The other thing I consider really important is congress or meetings, when you're able not particularly to show off, but to keep learning about what's good or bad in your specialty, and where you learn to do oral presentation, and when you learn to present your work, academic one, studies, research. I think it's really, really important. And also, like Dr. Latenza said, we are really facing more microaggressions. Like every time they tell you, oh, but why are you like that? You're just expressing an opinion, and it's gonna be related to your periods, or maybe you have a bad day. No, I'm just expressing something that any man will do, but it's not welcome the same way. So of course we can have humor and laugh about some things, but do not tolerate too much of this microaggression, because it's killing you one day at a time. And sometimes you have really to put boundaries and to ask people to stop and to tell them that It's not because you're a woman that they're allowed to push you around like that. I think that's really important. As for opportunities, I work in academic service, so of course, I try to go as much as I could in the OR, but I'm also trying to participate in every aspect of the service work, such as articles, by collecting data, translating articles, or doing meta-analysis and presenting work to the medical students and to the residents to lead by example.
Thank you so much. Dr. Latanza?
So I think I want to keep bringing this back to the positive, because I think we all love our jobs and we love what we do, but there's no doubt that it's more difficult being a woman surgeon than being a male surgeon, even still. But it's better than it was when I started in the 90s. I think, you know, opportunities for personal and professional growth, it depends a little bit where you are in your training. If you're a medical student, I think anybody can benefit from spending time understanding yourself, your values, your goals, what you want to accomplish in life, because it's not until you know yourself really well that you can chart a path for where you want to go. And you can do these things by talking to friends and family, by doing online personality inventories and leadership inventories, by getting a professional coach, which is somewhat like a work therapist that helps you understand where you want to be and how to get there. Networking with peers that are trying to do the same thing that you are can be very, very helpful to help bolster you up on those days that maybe aren't as good, and also share the wins. Taking leadership courses and seminars, it's never too early to start learning how to be a leader, because that will make you stand out as well. And there are multiple organizations for women who are interested in orthopedic surgery specifically, is where my knowledge is. But in the United States, we have the Ruth Jackson Orthopedic Society that has a very rich online content for both information about how to become an orthopedic surgeon, how to be successful, how to become a leader within the field. There are, you know, the Perry Initiative that I started that introduces not only high school students, but also college and medical students to the field of orthopedic surgery. Putting yourself in a position where you can do some research. So if you're in medical school right now and you're thinking of becoming a surgeon, finding a collaborator that you can complete some research projects with is very good for your CV when you're applying for these positions, but also for just your academic intellectual curiosity and learning more about that specialty. So I think that that's very important. Statistically, women publish less and they publish much later than men do. And this probably all comes back to not having enough mentors and enough women in the field, because we tend to help the people that look like us and that are common to us. So women tend to help women more and men tend to help men more. And that's part of the problem. And the only way to change the culture is to get more women into the specialty. So everybody on this webinar today, we hope to see you in the operating room soon. I think you also have to create opportunities for yourself. So if you're very interested in doing global surgery, then, you know, go online. There's many student research sponsored awards and travel grants for global training and global research. And then I think also there are many organizations out there that do help with sponsoring and also helping women get through orthopedic residencies, like what Dr. Andreacchio created in Argentina. And in the United States, we have the Ruth Jackson Orthopedic Society. I just got off a meeting of a group called IOTA, which is the International Orthopedic Diversity Alliance, which is orthopedic surgeons from all over the world. And we're sponsoring our first all-female orthopedic meeting this year. So there's all of those kinds of things that you should seek out, and it's a little bit easier now. as many of these meetings are taking place online with Zoom and YouTube and other things. And I think, all of these things help you stand out as a candidate, but also make you a better surgeon, a better doctor, and a better person. So I would encourage everyone to, think about the thing that you're most passionate about. Is it research? Is it leadership? Is it global surgery? And then focus some energy on that and try to stand out in that area. Thank you.
Thank you so much for all of this insight from Dr. Latanza, Dr. Andreacchio, and Dr. C. I want to ask you now two additional questions, though. The first question is there anything that you would like to share with students and residents about your personal experiences and how to be successful clinicians, but also successful in your personal lives? So how do you overcome burnout, or how do you balance life? When do you say no? And how to work with these things being a women's surgeon. So first with Dr. Andreacchio.
Bueno, el equilibrio no sé si lo logré y no sé si lo voy a lograr en lo que me resta. Trato de hacer lo posible, la gente que trabaja conmigo, algunos que están presentes acá, saben que a veces no logro el equilibrio, pero bueno, lo intento diariamente, la verdad es que lo intento. A ver, yo coincido plenamente con todo lo que están diciendo. Coincido que hay que ser proactivo, coincido con que hay que buscarle las cosas buenas, que no todo es tan malo. Coincido en que a fuerza de trabajo, a fuerza de ponerle pasión a lo que uno hace y de sentir que lo que uno hace es lo que a uno le gusta, es la manera. Quizás a eso se refería Lisa recién cuando decía empezar a conocerse una, y en realidad es darse cuenta de que esto es lo que uno eligió como forma de vida, que esto es lo que uno elige cada día que se levanta y dice, hoy voy a operar, hoy voy al hospital, hoy voy a mi trabajo de gestión o en otros ámbitos donde uno se mueva. Pero es cierto que a veces uno se cansa y sobre todo se va cansando a medida que van pasando los años, porque el esfuerzo es mucho y las horas de dedicación son muchas. Por lo menos acá en la Argentina nosotros tenemos pluriempleos, tenemos muchos trabajos, no tenemos uno solo en un solo lugar, entonces nuestra vida comienza a la mañana, en general en el hospital, y como nuestros sueldos no son lo suficiente como para poder vivir con uno solo, es que después tenemos una actividad privada que nos lleva de un sanatorio al otro, y ahí es donde tenemos todas y todos un equipo de gente que nos acompaña. Yo tengo la suerte de tener uno absolutamente diverso, donde hay hombres y mujeres, donde tratamos, aunque a veces discutimos y aunque a veces tenemos nuestras diferencias propias del trabajo, tratamos de ser amigos, de ser familia. Y creo que esa es la clave. Cuando uno trabaja de lo que le gusta y con la gente que quiere trabajar, todas las dificultades se van superando. Algunas con mucho más esfuerzo que otras. Como decían recién, es cierto que ahora se está abriendo un poco el camino, pero también es cierto que lo que no tenemos que confundir es con que ahora, como hay mucho movimiento con respecto al género, por lo menos les vuelvo a repetir, acá en mi país lo que me asombra es que en el resto del mundo pasa lo mismo, cuando yo pensé que iban bastante más adelante que nosotros, en algunos puntos estamos como todos iguales. Si bien hay mucho movimiento y mucho avance con el tema de género, Entonces ahora está la otra costumbre que es, bueno, pongamos una mujer así nadie dice nada, y eso tampoco nos cierra, eso no nos sirve. Yo tengo una expresión muy acá de la Argentina, que es decir, yo no quiero ser un florero en una mesa de discusión, quiero que me dejen hablar, porque yo sé hablar, yo sé lo que digo, soy buena en lo que hago, llegué con muchísimo esfuerzo, con muchísimo trabajo, lo que tengo lo tengo a fuerza de mi esfuerzo y de sacrificar un montón de cosas, más allá de los mentores y más allá de los patrocinios que en realidad casi como que ahora uno empieza a ver y no al principio de la carrera. Pero más allá de todo eso, creo que de todo lo que te ayuda a seguir adelante es la pasión que uno pone en cada una de las cosas que hace. Y armar Cirujanas Argentinas fue justamente esto que decíamos recién, es darle un espacio a las mujeres para que las mujeres tengamos la oportunidad de ayudarnos unas a otras, que nos escuchemos unas a otras, que nos acompañemos unas a otras. Y les cuento que no ha sido algo muy bien visto, por el contrario, nos han dicho que nosotras en realidad con esto lo que hacemos es apartarnos del mundo académico y en realidad no entendieron que no estamos apartándonos del mundo académico, estamos peleando y luchando porque nos incluyan en el mundo académico en la calidad que debemos estar incluidas de acuerdo a lo que sabe cada una. De ninguna manera pretendemos que haya mujeres porque tiene que haber mujeres. Tiene que haber mujeres porque las mujeres somos tan capaces como los hombres. Y por eso tiene que haber mujeres, porque muchas son muy buenas en lo que hacen y tienen que ser vistas, y mientras no sean vistas, las cosas no van a cambiar. Si me piden un solo resumen de cómo seguir adelante, es a fuerza de trabajo, a fuerza de no bajar los brazos y a fuerza de ayudarnos unos a otros. Mujeres que ayudan mujeres, creo que es el lema más importante que tenemos que llevar adelante en todo el mundo para que podamos tener el lugar que cada una de nosotras merece.
Thank you so much for all of that, Dr. Andrea. Now, Dr. C, could you share with us?
As for my personal experience, of course, each work you spend for each work a lot of time in it, and especially when you're a surgeon. Then, like it has been said before, it's really the best job of the world. And I think we have to keep that in mind to always be grateful that we're able to go through the difficulties, the ups and downs of our studies to be where we are today, because it's really a great position, even if some days are more difficult than others. But all in all, I'm really happy to have chosen this path and to have listened to my family and my friends that were really encouraging me. During my studies and even now, I think I really keep enjoying myself because when you come to work, even if you have your personal problems or things you have in mind, when you get here, it's really, really nice to say, every day I'm gonna do something different. Even if you do the same technique, you have a different patient, you have a different relationship with them. And it's like every day is new and you have always something to learn by yourself or to teach to other people. Even with the people you work with, I mean, if you can make medical students do stitches in the OR and their thank you is your reward. So I like to say really it's not the perfect job, it doesn't exist, but for me it is. So I'm really happy that I was able to go through all of that. And I think we have to stay true to ourselves, that's for sure, like in every spectrum of life, but keep an open mind too. Like when you go to other service, like for me, I went to cardiovascular and thoracic surgery. And even if I wasn't seeing myself doing that for the rest of my life, I really learned a lot of things in the OR, you know, good things, bad things, but you always learn. You always have something to learn. And luckily, it's most of the time really positive. So it's an overwhelming job, but it's really so interesting and so not entertaining, but kind of, because it's really something that you don't have, I think, in a lot of jobs. And sometimes it can get really hectic because it's really a lot of stress coming from everyone, even within us. Sometimes you have to take a step back and just learn to slow down, to breathe from time to time, to let go some of the things you cannot control, to stay focused, of course, but do not take every stress you have like a personal failure or professional one, but just take a moment to step back, to think about it, to talk about it with colleagues. Sometimes it helps a lot to evacuate all the stress from your system and then going on with a really positive ground. I think that's the most important thing. And not forget to communicate, not keeping to yourself what can stress you, because it's really stressful, of course. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Now, if Dr. Latanza could share with us some.
Thank you. Just to talk a little bit about my personal experience and work-life balance, I agree there's really no such thing as balance, or else I'm really bad at it. But I do think that there is a such thing as boundaries, and that we all have to draw boundaries around our work and separate it from our families in order to remain healthy and keep from becoming burned out. And I have a personal experience with burnout. There was a time during my career that I absolutely was suffering from burnout. It was a very busy time, both at work and at home. And there were days where I felt like it was all just too much. And I think the first thing about combating burnout, whether it's in medical school or when you're working, is to, first of all, realize that it exists. I think when I was experiencing this, we hadn't started talking about burnout yet. It wasn't a word that was used to describe what I was feeling. And I think the other thing is to realize that only so much of it is under your control as an individual. Much of what causes burnout in medicine are systemic issues with how we have to practice medicine these days, with electronic medical records and how many patients we have to see and how many nights we're on call and things like that can become overwhelming, especially if you're trying to balance that with family life. So I think the best way to combat burnout is to recognize that it exists and prevent it. And I think the way to prevent it, the things that are under your control, are things like having a routine that includes everyday exercise or something that brings you joy outside of work, making sure that you get enough sleep no matter what, having some kind of relaxation in your life and socialization in your life, that if it doesn't happen every day, it happens enough that fills your spirit back up from all of the things that can drain it. Because even though this is a wonderful job and I'm very grateful to have been able to make it in this profession, even patients take a lot out of you sometimes. And although that interaction can be very positive and fulfilling, it also can be taxing. So having somewhat of a shield around you that consists of family, friends, socialization, relaxation, all of those things are very important. And I think as you progress through your career, what I've learned looking back is that a change is as good as the rest. So in other words, if I'm feeling like maybe things aren't as exciting as they used to be, I try to take on something new. And that something new might be starting a nonprofit. It might be taking on a new role in my hospital. It might be, maybe I haven't gone and done international work in a while, and that's very fulfilling to me. That generally carries me for a long ways. And it may be taking on a new hobby and learning something new and challenging myself and my brain in a different way. And these are all strategies that have helped me since that initial episode of burnout that I experienced some time back. One of the questions was, how do you say no? And how do you manage this when you're really trying to you're trying to do everything that you can to progress your career or get into the career that you want to do. And so how do you say no to things, and how do you decide what to say no to? And I remember having this conversation with one of my mentors early on. And she said that her way of doing this was to say to the person asking, I'd love to say yes, but I have to say no because I value our relationship too much to not do a good job. And I thought that was really insightful, because the worst thing that you can do is take on too much and then not do well at that thing that you said you were going to do, or not be able to complete that task. And that reflects poorly on you and reflects poorly on your mentor that maybe has asked you to do something. So you do have to have something in your pocket to be able to gracefully say no to things. And what do you say no to? You say no to those things that really are not of interest to you, that you're not passionate about, that aren't going to advance your career at that point in time. And it is a little bit of takes some experience to understand what those things are. But in medicine in general, women tend to take on roles that are more supportive in nature and not necessarily things that further their careers. There's more women on committees than men, disproportionately to how many women are in medicine or surgery. And those kinds of things don't really enhance your career development. But if it's something that you're passionate about, then you should still say yes to that thing when you're asked. And so I think all of those things are important for developing a surgical career that has longevity to it, and that helps you kind of from one stepping stone to the next, because it's always a progression. And every time you get to that next step, it's a little bit like starting over again and having to figure out some things in a different way, depending on what stage of your career that you're in.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lattanza. Now we have a few minutes for our last question before we are open to the questions from the chat. And our last question is, what do you consider are key characteristics for female surgeons and in their route for success? Starting with Dr. Andreacchio.
Qué difícil. Las claves para el éxito. Vuelvo a decir lo que dije al inicio. No sé si yo soy exitosa. Estar acá creo que hace que una piense que sí es exitosa. No sé si soy exitosa, lo que sí sé es que estoy haciendo lo que quiero hacer, estoy haciendo lo que me gusta hacer, estoy haciendo lo que me hace feliz hacer, y se lo debo a mi esfuerzo primero y después a muchísima gente. Pero la clave es no bajar los brazos, la clave es seguir para adelante, la clave es tener una meta y no salirse del camino, por más que nos empujan a salir, tratar de volver. Y creo que la clave, sobre todas las cosas, es que el éxito personal no te lleva a ningún lado. El éxito de una persona, digamos, que digan qué exitosa es la doctora Andreacchio, en realidad a mí no me termina de servir. A mí lo que me sirve es que me digan hicimos algo para seguir adelante, hicimos algo por otros, que en definitiva es lo que nosotros hacemos cuando elegimos hacer esta profesión. Digamos, no, de ninguna manera, creo que esto es algo que sí nos diferencia a las mujeres, y que la clave de nuestro éxito está en sentirnos que hacemos algo por otras personas, que no lo hacemos por nosotras, que somos un grupo y que todas seguimos para adelante. Y que, en definitiva, la clave del éxito es que uno es feliz si los demás también lo son, y si todos juntos podemos construir para beneficio de otras personas, de nuestros pacientes, de nuestros colegas, y de toda la gente que nos rodea. Yo no me considero una persona exitosa porque en esta carrera hice lo que quise hacer, porque tengo un montón de gente a la que yo admiro y tengo un montón de gente que me quiere, y creo que soy exitosa por eso, porque me considero afortunada en haber llegado hasta acá. Y bueno, nada, más que afortunada de estar hoy y de compartir con todas ustedes.
Thank you, Dr. Andraquio. And now, Dr. C, what do you think are some of the characteristics that support you as a successful women surgeon?
Well, like Dr. Andraquio said, first of all, you have to think success to you, not to other people to please them, because everybody has its own idea of what happiness and success is. But first of all, be happy for yourself, and just do you, do what's best for you. As we talked about it earlier, to maintain a healthy work-life balance, not to be too much caught in the moment and forget about yourself as a human being, because the better human being you're becoming, the better doctor you are as well. And as for me, it was, for example, to travel. I traveled a lot. I'm making time for it, not this year, obviously, but most of the time, to see your family, to do what you like, to have time for your hobbies, and not forget who you are. You have to be confident, because it's usually something that's more seen on men, but to be confident, you can be humble, of course, because you don't know everything and you're learning every day, but you have to maintain a balance between the two, not to excuse yourself every time you do something. And I don't know if it's something you say in English, but I would say it's a good sentence, to have an iron hand in a velvet glove, which is really a question of balance, of strengths, but sometimes to learn how to let go as well. So to be strong, to pursue your dream, not to forget who you are, that's the most important thing. And to be flexible, to adapt, to be like, the bamboo that bends but not break, because you'll have a lot of ordeal along the way. But yeah, I would say to have balance and to remain true to yourself. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. C. Now, Dr. Latanza, if you could share with us some of the key characteristics for success in this career.
Well, I agree with everything that's been said so far, and I'm not sure I have a lot more to add to that. But I would say, to be successful as a surgeon, the first thing that you have to do is hone your craft. So surgery is almost like a sport. And of all the things that you can focus on, the first thing that you need to focus on is being a brilliant surgeon, or the best surgeon that you can possibly be. And, there are surgeons who are completely gifted, and there are surgeons who are just good mechanics, and both are great as long as you rise to the highest level that you can rise to. And that's one way that you make yourself happy and you make your patients happy. And really, at the end of the day, those are the two people that you need to worry about, is making yourself happy and making your patients happy. I think, surgery for women, you have to have some resilience, or what we call grit. I think tenacity is another word that comes to mind. So you're able to pick yourself back up and keep moving, and which is another way of saying you're being tough and strong. I mean, I think you have to have passion for what you're doing, whether it's surgery or something else, but specifically in surgery, because let's not kid ourselves, surgery is a difficult road for both men and women. It's a tough specialty. It's more difficult for women, no doubt. But you have to have passion for what you're doing, or you won't, not only will you not be successful, you'll never be happy. You have to have focus to be a surgeon. And I think you have to have both confidence and humility for your patients. So they want to know that you can get the job done, but they also want to know that you're a human being and that you have empathy for them. And then I think probably the last two things that are important is, and maybe they're not last, maybe they're first, is having a sense of humor. Because if we start taking ourselves too seriously, it's impossible to be good at what you do, and it's also impossible to be happy. And I think, you know, to be a female surgeon, let's face it, you need a thick skin. You need to be able to let things roll off your back a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you all. Now we were going to take some questions from the chat. I know we have one here. If anybody else has any other questions, please enter them now. Elizabeth, if you could please start with the questions.
Yes, so we had only one question from the chat so far, and this was, sounds like it was for Dr. Andrea Acquio. It was, por favor, con teorías como Sergio Cirana Argentinas. Maybe we can kind of, so it was asking how did Argentinian surgeons kind of emerge, how did they come to be, but maybe could we focus it on how did you come to form Cirujanas Argentinas?
Bueno, la verdad es que es una idea que nos surgió en un congreso. Nos habían invitado, voy a tratar de hacer la historia lo más corta posible, me habían invitado a mí particularmente a participar de un congreso acá en la Argentina. Era un congreso internacional, con lo cual venían invitados extranjeros, y cuando yo me pongo a revisar todo el programa, la única mujer que estaba en el programa era yo, y estaba en la última mesa del día, casi a la noche. Todas nosotras que hemos pasado por algún congreso sabemos que es el horario en que no queda nadie. Estaba casi al final del día en una mesa, coordinando una mesa, ni siquiera hablando ni nada, coordinando una mesa junto con dos cirujanos de mucha envergadura, con lo cual las posibilidades de que yo pudiera hablar eran prácticamente, no sé si nulas, pero mínimas por lo menos. Cuando yo vi eso y fui a ese congreso, realmente me puse a hablar con la gente que lo dirigía, y me contestaron que yo debía sentirme orgullosa de ser la única mujer que participaba. Y realmente eso marcó para mí un antes y un después, porque yo de ninguna manera podía sentirme orgullosa de tener un privilegio, porque en realidad a mí me parece que la participación de las mujeres en el ámbito académico no es un privilegio, porque un privilegio es algo que tiene un grupo de gente. Es un derecho que tenemos las mujeres. Algunas, digamos, tendrán alguna capacidad de trabajo y alguna capacidad no sé, de discursiva, de presentar trabajos, de participar en mesas. Vamos, hay gente a la que no le gusta hablar en público, hay muchísimas cosas y muchísimas posibilidades de elegir participar en un congreso, pero de ninguna manera puede ser un privilegio dado a los hombres, sino que tiene que ser un derecho al que con la misma posibilidad podamos participar hombres y mujeres. A partir de ahí fue que reuní a las mujeres que estábamos, que éramos muy pocas, y nos encontramos en el lobby del hotel y dijimos, algo tenemos que hacer. Y como anécdota les cuento que cuando les pedimos al presidente del Congreso que dijera que nosotras nos íbamos a reunir, él dijo, las mujeres cirujanas se van a reunir en el lobby del hotel cuando termine la sesión, punto, y a continuación siguió. Como dice el Papa, seguramente van a hacer lío. Ese fue el broche que faltaba para darnos cuenta que en realidad nosotras necesitábamos entender qué era lo que nos estaba pasando. Y eso fue lo que hicimos, nos juntamos, pusimos dinero que fuimos aportando entre nosotras, fuimos a un escribano, hicimos un estatuto como corresponde, y acá hay algo que se llama Inspección General de Justicia, que es una entidad que nos da como el aval legal para funcionar como una asociación civil. Y eso es lo que somos a partir del año pasado, y tendremos mañana, que hemos elegido la fecha de mañana porque nos parece muy representativa para nosotros, nuestra primera asamblea como asociación civil de cirujanas argentinas. No somos solo cirujanas generales, hay mujeres que se dedican a la cirugía, en la rama de la ortopedia, ginecología, otorrino, en todas las áreas quirúrgicas. Y estamos empezando a trabajar para ayudarnos unas a otras y para que los privilegios dejen de ser privilegios y se transformen en derechos, porque si no los tengo yo, entonces no es un derecho, es un privilegio. Y con eso, en la Argentina por lo menos, estamos trabajando para que eso se termine. Así que hay muchas más cosas para contarles, pero si no, la que quiera saber, tienen mis redes sociales, tienen las redes sociales de Cirujanas Argentinas, pueden comunicarse con nosotras, y de hecho, a la que quiera, del país que quiera, estamos abiertas para que esto deje de ser Cirujanas Argentinas, quizás para ser cirujanas por el mundo, ¿por qué no?
Awesome, thank you so much. And kind of similarly, Dr. Latanza, how did you come to start the Perry Initiative? And what are some of your biggest accomplishments in that? Dr. Latanza?
Can you repeat it? I was flipping over. I didn't hear the question.
Yeah, no worries. So kind of similarly, how did you come to start the Perry Initiative, and what would you say are some of your biggest accomplishments in the program?
So in 2009, I was working with a young mechanical engineer, and we were doing some research together. And we were commiserating about the fact that she was the only female engineer and I was the only female surgeon at the time. And we were sort of just having a chat and were complaining a bit, honestly. And then we started to talk more and said, well, what could we do to impact this? How can we get more women into these two careers that are interlinked? Engineers are a big part of orthopedic surgery and have a similar problem with only 7% being women. So we sat down in earnest and kind of outlined what we thought we might do. And we thought, well, probably exposure is a big part of this, because even in medical school, orthopedic surgery is not a rotation for people. Women aren't generally exposed to STEM and engineering early on. And at least in the United States, we lose girls in their interest for science right around junior high, because it's not thought to be okay socially to be interested in mathematics and science and things like that. So we designed a summertime program that met once a week with doing hands-on experiments that were related to orthopedic surgery and engineering. And we had women that were already in the field come and give talks. And then we had some interactive panel discussions. And we did that for 4 weeks in the summer. And it was very well received, but we could only impact those 18 young women that came to the seminar. And so we figured out early that if we were going to impact more women, we had to be able to reproduce this on a larger scale. So then we started holding the programs for just a Saturday, and we would we did this in a scientific way, in that the Perry Initiative is reproducible. You could walk into one anywhere in the country and it's going to look exactly the same. So we were also able to do research to see what our impact was on these young women. And we've been following them longitudinally now for 11 years. So we hold 54 programs annually in 45 different cities in the United States. And those are for high school students, and we hold about 20 programs for medical students. And these are all hands-on programs. They're doing surgical simulation, learning how to suture and things like that. And I would say our largest accomplishment is that we've had almost 14,000 young women go through these programs now since 2009. And in the United States, we have more than a 20% match rate in other words, if the women that have gone through this program select to go into orthopedic surgery at a rate of 20%, and the national average in the United States is around 13 or 14%. So we think that we're actually having a positive effect on the number of women who have been exposed to orthopedics and then choose to go into it because of these programs. So I think that the exposure and the longitudinal mentoring are what's making the program successful, and probably one of the things in my entire career that I'm most proud of.
Thank you, Dr. Latanza. I mean, both of the programs, we look forward to seeing what it will accomplish, because it really is helping a lot of people, especially females and students who, would like to further, go into medicine or surgery and just are looking for the outlet to do so. Danny, did you want to have any final says? Wrap up?
No, not really. I want to thank all of our panelists today for their time. I know it's a Saturday morning, so we're really thankful for you to be sharing with us your stories about all the challenges that can happen in our training from beginning to even today. But of course, with a great and positive attitude and love for the field that you have chosen. It's really inspiring to hear how what might have started as something a little bit bitter has turned into great initiatives that you have used to support the future women's with initiatives impacting the younger generations like Dr. Latanza, or impacting students in the academic field like Dr. C, and even Dr. Andreacchio, seeing that need to raise the voice and to be able to promote women surgeons in Argentina, taking those steps to say we're here and we are supporting the future female surgeons. If any of you would like to share your social media, please let us know so that anybody who's attending that wants to follow you on Twitter can do so, or through the web pages. I know Dr. Latanza has shared the PEAR initiative. I've also shared Cirujanas Argentina's webpage. But I thank everybody for being here and our panelists for being so great and sharing their stories.